I'm Luna. Welcome to the Lunarium. Today, this day that I'm filming, it's November 2nd, 2020, which means in the United States, tomorrow is Election Day. I am incredibly anxious, both about the results of the election, but even more about the potential of civil unrest because of the results of the election. The risk of violence popping up throughout the country over the next days, weeks, or even months has me really, really anxious. And instead of just sitting around feeling anxious, I've decided to put some of my energy into prepping. So today we are going to talk about why you should prep and some basic tips for prepping, and especially with some focus on prepping for people with mental illness. I want to clarify that this is prepping for an external emergency and not an internal emergency like a mental health crisis. I'm going to do a whole other video on emergency planning for mental health crises. So first, why you should begin prepping. I think when a lot of people hear the term prepper, they picture people storing a bunch of guns in a homemade bomb shelter. There's often a sense that the only people who spend a lot of time, money, and energy worrying about potential disasters are people wearing tinfoil hats or people who spend way too much time on conspiracy message boards. The thing is, though, it really is only good sense to have some basic emergency preparedness. COVID taught us that you really don't know when situations are going to change drastically, and it's often in ways that you just can't anticipate. Right now, I'm really worried about violence, but also the threat of ecological disasters like floods, fires, hurricanes, tornadoes are only going to worsen across the world as global warming continues to worsen. Obviously, there's no point in spending all of your time and energy preparing for disasters that may never come, but there's also really no logic in just not thinking about it at all. It's way better to have an emergency plan and some basic supplies and end up not needing them than to find yourself in an emergency and be completely without any tools to help you. Another reason why prepping is a good idea is because when an emergency happens, you won't need to panic. This means you're more likely to avoid needing to go to a grocery store or a convenience store when everyone else is panicking and trying to get supplies. We've all seen those disaster movies where people are killing each other over the last bottle of water in a store. When people are panicking, dangerous things happen. So the more that you have all of the supplies you need beforehand, the less you need to possibly enter a situation that could be really dangerous. Also, the more that you have enough supplies, the more that you can help the people around you. So prepping isn't just good for you, it's also good for your community. The more supplies that you have, the more that you can share them and help the other people around you survive as well. So prepping is also a way to take care of others. A few weeks ago, I told some of my family members that they should make sure that they have some food and water and emergency supplies just in case. And most of my family, they were respectful, but I think that they thought it was ridiculous. My stepmom actually said, I'm an optimistic person and I choose not to worry about that kind of thing. And obviously, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but I personally don't think prepping is a matter of optimism versus pessimism. I think it's a matter of practicality and recognizing that there's only so much you can control in this world. I have a really hard time feeling like I don't have autonomy and power. The idea that there are all kinds of things in this world that will just happen that I have no say or control over really makes me feel so anxious, so powerless, it just really makes my mental illness worse. And one thing that I can do to feel like I have more agency and control is to do a little bit of emergency preparedness. All right, now let's talk about some basic prepping tips. Remember the rule of threes. Humans can survive 3 minutes without oxygen, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food. Something else to think about when you're prepping is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That's a principle from psychology that talks about the things that humans need in order to have a satisfactory life. At the very bottom of the pyramid are the things that you should address first when you're prepping. That's those things that you actually need in order to survive. Food, water, air, and shelter. In prepping, there's an idea of the 80-20 rule. This basically means that 20% of your initial prepping that you do is going to cover 80% of what you'll need in a disaster situation. The remainder 20% of what you'll need in a disaster, those are things that are going to be very expensive and are going to involve a lot more time and effort in order to make you 100% emergency prepared. Think building a bunker that's safe from radiation. Most of us can only handle preparing for that 80%, both financially and in terms of the time and energy we have to devote to this. So don't worry about all situations. Just think about that bottom pyramid and of Maslow's hierarchy of needs and do what you can. It's also really important to be prepping and thinking about your budget. It really doesn't make sense to spend $1,000 on buckets of dehydrated meals, gas masks, things that, could come in handy if you don't have thousands of dollars to spare. You can prep on a budget, and a little goes a long way. When you're prepping, the first thing you should do is think about making sure that you could survive a disaster situation that's the length of 3 days. So make sure you have enough water, enough food for 3 days. Once you have that stored up, next you want to be thinking about 2 weeks. Basically, the more supplies you have, the better prepared you'll be. But it really doesn't make sense to go out and buy 2 weeks worth of bottled water and food, particularly when you're on a budget. So start small. Every time that you get groceries, buy a gallon of bottled water, buy a couple extra cans of soup. To be honest, right now, air is the aspect of that bottom category of Maslow's hierarchy that I just can't afford to prepare for right now. I don't have the money to buy a gas mask, even though I think it could be useful. So for now, I'm focusing on building up my supplies of food and potable water. There are more average emergencies that can pop up in your life. Car breaking down, getting injured or sick, particularly right now, anything that could pop up where you might need a rainy day fund. So it's better to not deplete your resources prepping for, catastrophes. Make sure that you are both planning for mundane everyday life in addition to preparing for the worst. I also want to point out that there's no sense in preparing for a zombie apocalypse. Of all the things in 2020 to worry about, that kind of dystopian, completely cataclysmic, fantastical event is not the thing that you need to worry about. Although, now that I said that, I'm going to knock on wood because 2020 could do it, I'm pretty sure. You basically are only going to want to prepare for two kinds of emergencies. These are emergencies that would cause you to flee your home. Think a fire, an invasion, and emergencies that would cause you to be stuck in your home with limited contact to outside resources and possibly utilities. Think a flood that traps you in your home, civil unrest that makes leaving your home unsafe, that kind of thing. Preppers use the term bug out for those emergencies that cause you to flee, and bug in for those emergencies that cause you to be stuck in your home. So now we're going to talk about how you can prepare for a bug out. In a bug out situation, the best way to prepare is to have a bug out bag. This is ideally a backpack where you have some basic supplies and essentials so that if there's an evacuation order, you just grab your bag and you go. You don't need to spend costly minutes gathering up all those supplies that you might possibly need. Due to how little you can realistically carry with you, a bug out is definitely the kind of situation where you're going to only be able to realistically prepare for 3 days at most. Think 3 days worth of water. That is going to be really heavy. So it's best to get some way to filter water, like a life straw. Think 3 days worth of food. This should be lightweight, compact food that doesn't need to be cooked and that has a really long shelf life. So it can sit in your bug out bag and you don't need to worry about it. Your bug out bag should contain a change of clothes and ideally some weather protection. Think a poncho, basic layers, maybe a blanket, a hat. Although remember, there's only so much room that your bag has, and it's really just not going to be possible to pack for all kinds of weather options. So you have to be smart about what you choose to bring, but definitely just a basic change of clothes, including underwear and socks, and something to help protect you from the cold. Another thing that's really important for a bug out bag is basic medical supplies. That's first aid supplies, that's bandages, band-aids, over-the-counter meds, pain relief, anti-nausea, allergy, and also some supply of prescription meds. It's also really important that you have a flash drive that you put important documents on. Think birth certificate, social security card, driver's license, maybe deeds to your property, pink slip of your car, any medical records that you feel are really important to save, passport. I'm going to put my degree just because you never know, and I'd like to prove that I actually did go to college one day. Basically, it's all of those like mundane papers that could possibly be destroyed in an emergency, but that could be really important. You want to put that flash drive and some basic emergency cash, as much as you can spare, in a waterproof bag. I'm pretty sure that they sell waterproof bags online. In a pinch, of course, you can use a Ziploc. You also want some basic hygiene items. A great way to get these kinds of things is to go to the travel section, like at Target or something, and get those little toothbrush and toothpaste, a little thing of deodorant, a little thing of sunscreen, a little thing of bug spray. They're small, and obviously that kind of thing is a little higher up the Maslow pyramid, but that can really make or break feeling like you're okay when the world feels like it's crumbling around you.
Hey, it's Editor Luna here. I totally forgot to mention, when it comes to toiletries, bring a roll of toilet paper, put that in a Ziploc bag, and also, if you're someone who menstruates, make sure you bring a couple days worth of pads or tampons. Okay, back to Video Luna. Bye!
You also want some basic tools. Think like a pocket knife, can opener, flashlight is going to be very crucial, extra phone charger, a lighter or waterproof matches, sanitizer, a mask, and anything else that is a necessity for you. It's also really important to think about, if you have kids or pets, what they are going to need in that situation. So make sure you don't just have food and water for you, but you also have food and water for those under your care. So like my bug out bag is sitting next to my cat carrier, so that in an emergency, I'm going to put my cat in the carrier. I have cans of cat food in my bug out bag. I have water for both of us, and then we can go. In a bug out situation, you can't know right now, trying to imagine possible emergencies, exactly where you would go. But it's a good idea to have some basic plans. So, for example, my sister and I have agreed that if there was some kind of emergency, the first thing that we would do is find each other. We have a plan in place so that we know that she's supposed to come to my home. If we can't meet each other at my home, like it's unsafe, or I've already fled, next we're going to our dad's house. If our dad's house is unsafe, we're going to go to a friend's house. That's if we are going to flee west. We have thought about a parking lot if we need to flee east. Whether you are only thinking about an emergency plan for just yourself, or an emergency plan for your family or close loved ones, the more that you think through what you would do, the less that you're going to panic and just not be able to get out if you need to. It's about not spinning out and, like all of the things that could go wrong, but remembering to keep your options open while also having some concrete, realistic steps. The more you can plan in regular times when you're not panicking, the more likely you are to survive. You may not always be able to use your car in a disaster, but it's also a good idea to have some basic supplies in your car. It's a good idea to keep water in your car anyway, in case, your car ever overheats or you're just on a drive and really need some water. So it's a great idea to keep a first aid kit, some basic things like sanitizer, a mask, water, some granola bars, the kind that won't melt. You can carry a lot more water in your car than you can on your back. So it's a good thing to not just think about your bug out bag, but also having some supplies in your car if you can spare those supplies. Okay, so now we're going to talk about a bug in. As a reminder, that's the scenario where you're trapped in your home and maybe there's no power, maybe there's no water, maybe it's just not safe to leave, or maybe there's a pandemic. Who knows? So in a bug-in situation, the same rules apply. The thing is, though, that a lot of the time you already have a lot of the things in your home that are like at the top of that Maslow's hierarchy. You have things to keep you occupied. You even have warmth, and you have your changes of clothes, and you have your belongings. You have a lot of the things that you're going to need. In some ways, a bug in, you need to be prepping for food and water, but you have a lot of those things. So in a bug in, you are going to want to have enough water for everyone in your home to drink. That includes yourself, pets, kids. The general rule is to have a gallon of water per day. Although if you have a large family or lots of pets, you probably will need more than that. In a bug in, that's the kind of situation where you're going to want to be thinking about having 2 weeks worth of supplies. It's also important to make sure that you have candles or flashlights because you don't know if there will be electricity or not. I want to talk now about medication because a lot of the time people talk about you need to make sure that you have meds. And here in America, at least, it's just not possible to stockpile meds unless you start skipping doses so that you can have a backup supply. And I definitely do not recommend that you do that. I spoke to my psychiatrist about this because I know that it only takes a couple of days without my psychiatric medication before I cannot function. So in an emergency, the last thing that I want is to be without medication. My psychiatrist said that most of the time, insurance companies will allow you to refill your meds a week before you are expected to be out of it. And sometimes they might even let you refill it 2 weeks before you're out of it. This is all going to depend on your pharmacy and your insurance, but as a general rule, you should be able to fill your prescription a week before it's supposed to be out. So what you should do is refill your prescription the very first day that you possibly can, so then you have that extra week's worth. And that's what you use as your backup. And, if you do that every month, you can make sure that you have a supply. This is a channel that's mainly supposed to be talking about mental illness, so I definitely wanted to address the fact that your meds are such a hugely important part of emergency planning. One thing to remember with prepping and medication is you always want to know how much meds you have. You don't ever want to be in a situation where you only have one pill left because odds are that's the day when an emergency is going to hit. Or at least odds are for me with my luck. So having a system where you have a good sense like, oh, I only have 7 pills left. I need to refill my meds. The more that you are on top of that, the more prepared that you're going to be. If you find yourself in a situation where you are in an emergency, either a bug out or bug in, and you only have a couple of pills left and you aren't able to get more, You should try to avoid being in a situation where you're going to go off your meds abruptly. You should try and titrate down by cutting a pill in half, taking half, going down to quarters. A lot of psychiatric meds, if you just go off them cold turkey, they have really intense side effects that can really fuck you up and make surviving a disaster even more difficult. In addition to the fact that you have mental health symptoms that are going to emerge that maybe your meds are helping to keep at bay. I am not a medical professional, and I do not recommend that you use this technique unless you are in a situation where you have no other option. You absolutely cannot get your meds. Only in a situation like that should you use your own discretion about how you're going to slowly come down off that med. All right, now let's talk about protection. This is a subject that I am very, very, very not educated about. I have never liked guns, and in fact, I am not legally allowed to own or use a gun. So I am not someone who's going to advise everyone that they should get a firearm. In fact, if you have mental illness, particularly if you've struggled with suicidal ideation, I do not think it's a good idea for you to have a gun in your home. But it's also really important that you don't find yourself in a situation where you have no way of protecting yourself, particularly with the looming threat of civil unrest that's happening right now here in America. Unfortunately, it is a very real possibility that you could find yourself in danger from, say, other humans or wild animals. And in that case, it's going to be important that you're able to keep yourself safe. I'm just going to say again that anyone who struggles with suicidality, paranoia, psychosis, I do not recommend people who struggle with those things to have a gun in their home. So think of other ways that you can keep yourself safe. Things like pepper spray, a taser, a knife. All right. Those are all of the tips that I have for you today. Sorry that this video was so long. I really just want to do everything that I can so that everyone is at least a little prepared so that they don't find themselves in a disaster without any tools to survive. Thank you so much for watching. Please, if you have other tips or resources where people can learn more about prepping or emergency preparedness, please leave them in the comments down below. Please like and subscribe, all the YouTube things. Please, please, please keep yourselves and your loved ones safe. All of you are important, and we need all of you in this world. Take care of yourselves. Until next time. Bye.